No, this coin's not for spending, friend. That's my lucky kraken for to pay the tithe. The tithe? You know the tithe. Everyone knows about the tithe. Pay the tithe or face the ocean's wrath. Oh, by the bearded lady. Then you never heard of Nautilus either. The Titan of the depths. Barkeep! Pour us around, barkeep. There's a good lass. This is a tale that needs an ale, as they say. And my friend here's buying.
Hey, here's the plan. Turns out you guys really liked the Thresh video. I had people hitting me up in the comments saying that they enjoyed the video, they really liked the concept, the deep dive, so here we are again. This time, however, we're moving away from the Shadow Isles for our deep dive. In fact, when I say deep dive, I actually mean deep. Today's all about Nautilus. I'm going to explain to you who he is, how the card works, and give you a couple of examples of decks that you can use him in. Nautilus is my current go-to champion in Runeterra. He's a solid deck on ladder, and it's probably just one of my favorite decks to play. Nautilus is also just really, really cool. I asked a mate of mine who I should do for the next Who Is video, and he's right. Nautilus does look like Master Chief went to find Nemo. As always, I'm using the video chapters feature so you can scrub along in the timeline to get to the part that you want. You want the guide, it's there. You want the lore, that's there. You want to watch the whole thing, I love you. And before we crack into it, guys, I put a huge amount of effort into these vids. So if you want to hit subscribe, like to see some more, it's greatly appreciated. These take heaps of time to make between researching, scripting, all that sort of stuff, and a full-time job. I'm getting them out as quick as I can, but I'm only one man. Oh, and make sure you leave down in the comments which champion you guys want to see next. I'm always down for ideas, and if you want to see Shen, you want to see Lux, you want to see Zed, whatever, let me know. I'll sort it out. So, who is Nautilus? Nautilus is the biggest dude. I mean that both in the sense in the lore, he is a monolithic mountain of salt and steel, but also in that Nautilus is the highest stats of any collectible card in Runeterra.
What do you mean by collectible card, Viscerous?
I'll show you. This is a table done up by a user on Reddit called Aradia. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. And it plots various stat lines for all of the units in Runeterra as at the Rising Tides expansion. So basically, as you get lower and further to the right, the units get bigger, right? And see how there are 2 units right down in the bottom right? One of those cards is Catastrophe. It's technically a spell, but it's a unit that you can't even play until you've played 20 other cards, right? Nautilus, however, is a unit you can play straight from hand. This is what I mean by collectible, and it should tell you something that the only other unit bigger than Nautilus requires such an insane condition that you play 20 cards before you play that. Nautilus's aesthetic closely resembles that of an old school diving suit. His weapon of choice is an anchor, like a literal ship anchor. Again, Nautilus is huge. Take the New Dawn cinematic, for example. It's basically designed to emulate a game of League of Legends where all the champions are on Summoner's Rift, and for the most part, they're evenly matched. This is because Riot has an excellent history of balancing champions in a way that is not at all busted or causes any frustration within the community. So my man Nautilus shows up looking like somebody let the biggest Big Daddy out of Rapture, straight up one-shots Jax, turns around, lifts up his footy boots, and stomps the ground so hard it looks like the Jericho missile from Iron Man. Graves thinks he's got it covered. Nautilus has like 6 skins, I think, and 1 chroma, which is about average, I think, for most League of Legends champions. And none of them are really outdated or kind of grubby. So he's got a lot of pretty decent skins, Nothing I would say is like crazy excellent, but they're all solid. In Runeterra, his base card is him trudging along the sea floor. There's like sharks swimming around him. He's kind of just like minding his own business. I couldn't find any cool trivia in this art, but it does make for a great meme format. In his leveled up card art, however, Nautilus has literally busted up an entire ship, and he's holding onto a tentacle big enough to feed uni students sushi for a month. Nautilus is also referenced in a couple of other cards in the Runeterra universe, like he's got voice lines interacting with them, but they're mostly isolated to Bilgewater. because he tends to be like a Bilgewater folklore legend, he's not like Thresh, where he's known all over the world. He's mostly just a Bilgewater thing. There's a notable exception for Maokai, and I think this is due to the fact that their deck archetypes work really well together. It's not necessarily a lore point, but for the most part, it's Bilgewater or bust. Speaking of, let's talk lore. So, much like Thresh, Nautilus was originally just an ordinary dude. He was a sailor, specifically he was a salvage diver, and he was a really good one too. He's described as a hulking mass of muscle with lungs that could steal the air from a galleon's sails. So he's kind of a big deal, right? So where does Nautilus go diving? Well, in the lore, there are these shipwrecks that are apparently just full of loot because they were originally traveling to try and trade these huge amounts of wealth for the secret to immortality. Now, my best guess is these are the waters of life from the Shadow Isles, considering the proximity from Bilgewater to the Shadow Isles, but I don't know, it's never really confirmed. More on the waters of life in the Thresh video. So people would go to these shipwrecks to dive for treasure, and Nautilus was the best at it, by far. He's also a really superstitious bloke, so instead of asking for like extra wages or whatever because he was such a good diver, he'd insist that they always chucked a coin overboard when they were leaving so that you were basically as a respect for the ocean. It was a way to pay the tithe, right? This is a recurring theme. Remember this. Bilgewater, by the way, is referred to as, I'll read it off the monitor, a place where fortunes are made and ambitions are shattered in the blink of an eye. For those fleeing justice, debt, or persecution, Pirate Town. It's where it's Pirate Town. Pirate Town. They could have called it Tortuga and it would have made no difference. Now, whilst it's like generic piratetown.jpg, there is one major exception in that there's like a religious cult influence there. There's a giant serpent-headed, tentacled beast called Nagakeboros, otherwise known as the Mother Serpent, Great Kraken, or the Bearded Lady. Back to Nautilus. They keep at this for a while, the diving and getting the treasure, but eventually, you know, as you keep digging up more treasure, there's less to find. And over time, they find out that their ship and their papers have been bought out from under them. So they get a new captain, who's described as a sketchy bloke from a foreign land, and he seeks out Nautilus and gives him this brand new diving suit. On top of, what he would ordinarily have as a freediver, right? Then the guy insists that they head out to this shipwreck. So not the usual spot, but a different shipwreck that always looks like it's shrouded in darkness. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. It just always looks like it's shrouded in darkness, right? Now, you don't have to be the greatest detective in the world to know that that ship sounds like bad news. And sure enough, as Nautilus is about to dive down, he realizes that he hasn't paid the tithe yet. So he calls out to the captain in panic and he's like, "Ooh, hey, we need to pay the tithe," right? So my boy's diving. Next thing he knows, something's grabbed a hold of him and pulling him down, right? Now, the lore doesn't describe exactly what this is. The best I could find was eldritch magic, but something's grabbing him and something's dragging him, right? So Nautilus grabs onto the anchor and goes to pull himself up the chain. Keep in mind, as a side note, that he's in a full metal diving suit underwater and something is pulling him down. And he drags himself up the chain, right? The anchor chain. Dude's a beast. Now, unfortunately for Nautilus, before he can get to the top of the ship, chain snaps. He falls down to the dark depths of the ocean where no one can hear him scream. So the ship fades away, everything goes black, and he kind of passes out for a little bit. When he wakes up, though, he said the lore says that something's different. Yeah, so when he wakes up, the darkness doesn't bother him apparently, and his memory's kind of shot. Okay, so his memory's mostly gone, but he does remember the captain's broken promise to pay the tithe, right? So he vows then and there to make sure that everyone pays the tithe. So now it's not just a superstition, right? It's not just like crazy people throwing coins over the edge. If you don't pay the tithe, a giant sea monster will literally mess you up. Nautilus will come and find you. There's also one more really cool thing I want to show you about Nautilus, but I'm going to need a map first. Not this map, one a little bit closer to home. Australia, mate. Home of Vegemite, AC/DC, Tim Tams, and the world's most dangerous bird. No, that's not a dinosaur, and yes, it actually exists. It's called a cassowary. Now, a while back, Riot used to hold this event called Ocean Week. It was like an event for the oceanic servers, and everyone would get together and earn points as a community for rewards. In 2015, the highest reward that the community could reach was literally a giant Nautilus statue, being buried sunk off of the coast of Australia. Not only that, if you got 3 points in Ocean Week in 2015, your username got engraved onto the side of the statue before it was sunk off the coast. And they did it. They made it. It's off of Moreton Island near Brisbane. You can go and see the statue. So 40,000 people, about 40,000 people had their usernames carved on it. And a guy from Reddit, user Aussie Equiv, has gone down and dived like 3 or 4 times over the past 5 years to check on the statue. And you can still see the usernames carved into the side of it. And it's... Why are those the names? So Nautilus was released in Set 2, Rising Tides, the first official Runeterra expansion, and it's centered around Bilgewater. In League, though, Nautilus is a pretty flexible champion. He's a really tanky unit with great crowd control effects. So you can play him up top, jungle, or support. Like literally 4 out of his 5 abilities have some form of crowd control attached to it. The dude's like the king of CC. In Runeterra, however, Nautilus is, in my opinion, the single most valuable unit that you can play, assuming that you are deep. Before I run you through Nautilus, I gotta run you through like 5 separate game terms. Otherwise, a lot of this isn't gonna make sense. 1, tough. You take 1 less damage from all sources. 2, fearsome. Means that unit can't be blocked by a unit with 2 or less power unless you force it to. 3, deep. When you have 15 or less cards, you become deep, and you are deep for the rest of the game. This is symbolized by your deck literally going underwater and a cool sound going off. If a unit, however, has a deep keyword, it'll get 3 power and 3 health whenever you are deep. The only way to remove the deep aura is to silence the deep keyword on the unit, but that's not going to stop the aura for the rest of the game. Once you're deep, you're deep. 4, toss. You obliterate a specified number of non-champion cards from the bottom of your deck. 5, obliterate. Completely remove a specified instance of a card from a game. Can't be revived, doesn't trigger last breath, nothing. It's like you took the card and put it in a shredder. It's gone. Now that you got that, let's talk about Nautilus. Nautilus's base card is a 7 mana, 0/12 with tough and fearsome with the level up condition that you are deep. Pre-flip, Nautilus doesn't offer a whole lot of value. Given that he's got a 0 attack stat line, the fearsome keyword's useless pre-flip, especially because you don't run attack buffs. Like if you're not attacking, the fearsome element just doesn't even come into it, right? Because if you can't attack, who's going to block you? Once flipped, however, baby is a whole nother story. 3 things happen when Nautilus flips. First, he gets 1 health and 13 attack. Second, when he flips, he creates a copy of every 4+ cost ally that was tossed this game. And as if that wasn't enough, when Nautilus is on board, sea monsters, who are giant units, cost 4 less mana to play. That's insane. Nautilus's champion spell, by the way, is Riptide. It's a 4 mana spell that stuns a unit, or if there's a Nautilus on board, shuffles it back into their deck. It's an awesome soft removal spell, assuming you have Nautilus on board, and it shares its name with his E from League, which is the Stomp Jericho missile ability. So, are we still going with rank 1 Mav?
Yeah, for the next 13 days until the ladder resets.
That's true, yeah. And then
back
the ladder...
to Pleb Mav.
Oh, my, back to Pleb Mav. No, you be rank 1 again, man. You'll smash it.
Get on that grind.
Get on that grind. Let's talk deep. So, walk us through this deep deck of yours, Mav. How does it work?
Yeah, this is a sea monster I've been playing in tournaments and for the ladder most part.
Right.
Basically, you run 2 champions, Maokai and Nautilus, that you both have cards that basically synergize with tossing, that synergizes with Maokai and Nautilus. So the goal is just when you mulligan as well, you just look for early cards that toss.
Yep.
And then you just play them, tempo out, toss your deck away, and then slam down Maokai or Nautilus. And yeah.
Because one of your big things with a deep deck is you want to be getting deep as fast as possible. So it tosses your focus really early on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. You want to, if you can get deep on like usually around turn 5, 6, or 7. If you get any later, it's a bit it's a bit rough.
It's a bit dicey.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. And how does this deck do that better than others? Is that for your list specifically, I know that you're a big fan of Mistcall. You really like Mistcall in deep lists. I see it sometimes in other people's lists, but certainly I think I see a lot of Mistcall in your lists.
Well, yeah, Mistcall's like, I think, almost like a staple on this deck for the fact that it can be played early on. You can even use it on Dreggers or Deadbloom. That also helps toss. So you're basically, you can inherently be playing an extra Deadbloom, or sometimes versus like mid-rangey decks like Demacia. Just bringing back a Jules Hunters is very insane because they don't have ways to deal the 1 damage.
Yep.
Versus a deck like Shadow Isles and stuff, you don't want to Mistcall Jules Hunter. But
No,
so Mistcall's
because you're looking at things like Vile Feast and Withering Whale, that sort of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mistcall's good early on, but then it's also really good in the mid and late game, like especially like with Shipwreck, Hoarder, Nautilus, even Maokai, Abyssal Eye. It just works with pretty much all the minions in your deck, and it synergizes well. And I've never really found it to be dead card. The main reason why we cut back from a third is because Burn has
cut back from a
seen
third
less play.
Mistcall.
Yeah, it's because of Burn seeing less play. Like inherently, we play through Mistcall because that's a way that we would actually beat Burn and super aggro deck is by bringing back Deadbloom Wanderers, or even sometimes a Dreggers helps, or a Thorny Toad.
Yep.
But now Burn's seeing less, we decided to cut that one.
Last thing I want to talk to you about, Shipwreck, Hoarder versus Terror of the Tides. How do you make a decision between these two cards?
They shouldn't. Shipwreck Hoarder is just generally way better. I don't think you would ever swap Shipwreck Hoarder for Terror of the Tides. I think the more consideration is putting in a Terror of the Tides for just because it's Terror of the Tides. It's a card that can just close out games, win games, end games, which sometimes can be very impactful. Also in the mirror match, it makes it so they get bad trades. And versus Demacia, it's just a way that like. One way that gets annoying in the late game is how you lose. You play a bunch of sea monsters, but then they're board so wide and they can sort of go around you and just press you. They can just chump block you.
Yep.
Where Terror of the Tides just eliminates that. Terror of the Tides, you play it, and if they can't, it just ends as. One reason not to play Terror of the Tides, because you only really want one generally, and Jules Hunter has 20% every time you play it to pull a Terror of the Tides.
Yep.
And so
28%.
Oh, is it?
How many is it? Isn't there like 5 sea monsters? So 20%?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, okay. And that's about it. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button. I hope to make more of these videos in the future. If there's enough interest, right? Like the video, like the response to the Thresh video was insane. Like, thank you guys so much. It was the most amount of views I've ever got on a vid in any sort of like time period like that. So I just cannot thank you guys enough. I also stream live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. Brisbane time. That's why I kind of look super tired today. It's because I was climbing the Masters last night. We were up till 2 a.m. We got there though, worth. Links to everything is in the description. I've been Viscerous. You've been excellent. I'll catch you in the next one.